Greetings, Tezos Nation. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today is Jev Björsell, founder and CEO of ECAD Labs, the blockchain engineering team working tirelessly to empower and inspire every developer in the Tezos ecosystem. We've got some very cool giveaways to do today. Today, every single one of our live stream viewers can mint a free TezTalks Taqueria attendance NFT. All you have to do is visit taqueria.io//NFT during or shortly after the show. The gang from ECAD is launching a special Taqueria community NFT collection as a fun way to engage with early adopters and play with NFTs. After the TezTalks Taqueria NFT minting closes, ECAD Labs will give away a special swag bag to one lucky NFT holder. We'll also be giving away a Tezos branded Nano ledger and an ECAD swag bag to one lucky viewer today. If you'd like that lucky viewer to be you, keep an ear out for our keyword later on during the stream. And of course, if you have any questions for Jev that you'd like me to ask, please add them in the live stream chat anytime. We'll get to as many as we can before we wrap up. Hi, Jev. How are things on Vancouver Island?
Unmute myself there. So yeah, good, Stu. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's raining on Vancouver Island, but it's we're all doing well here. Thank you.
Standard operating procedure for Vancouver Island, right? Mm-hmm. To get us started, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you first got involved in the Tezos ecosystem?
Oh yeah, well, it's been a while, I guess. So my background is in software engineering, and I've always been interested in technology and computers, and very much in the open source side of things. I always enjoyed the lack of barriers for open source, and sort of that philosophy. So blockchain and cryptocurrencies in a philosophical sense was always something that I was really drawn to. But I kind of stayed away in the early days because something about like Bitcoin and Ethereum and like proof of work and so on didn't quite sit right with me. I just had a kind of a no feeling about some of it. I did play around with that stuff, but eventually Tezos came along, and I was kind of like nerd sniped by formal verification. I was like, oh, that's something that I haven't seen before, like talked about in the context of a blockchain, and it seems like really valuable. And then kept on reading, and it's talked about proof of stake. So like we don't have this massive energy consumption. And finally, then the sort of the clincher was like this on-chain governance. As I always felt like, we have these immutable ledgers that are updating, but it's a really sloppy, messy human consensus process with a lot of brinkmanship to get something like Bitcoin or Ethereum or these other networks upgraded. Yeah. And the fact that Tezos like codified that on chain, that was like, that was sort of the clinching thing. So I was like, okay, this is worth paying attention to. I'm gonna play around with this, and so I started running nodes in the pre-test nets before the network launched. It was also cool that it was written on OCaml, which I was really really curious about at the time. I knew Jane Street used that. It's a kind of scary looking programming language to people coming from C style languages, but it's not that bad. It's real cool stuff. So I started running nodes and so on. Participated in the fundraiser. I put a modest little bit of money in there just so I could keep working around with it. And I suppose how we started getting into actually writing software for Tezos was when I was running those nodes, I was a bit frustrated because, you run this node and you don't know what it's doing. So the observability primitives in the node were like left something to be desired. So I started writing some little tools around that, the kind of classic, developer has an itch, developer like makes a tool. And I open sourced that. Other people in the ecosystem started using it. I was flattered. And it kind of snowballed from there.
Okay. So was that you writing that little bit of code and people starting to use it? Was that sort of the impetus for you launching ECAD Labs?
No. ECAD Labs has been in business for about nearly 11 years now. So we've been a software consultancy and doing work for private sector clients in the past, kind of in the internet service provider area, and like voice over IP, that type of stuff, and some shipping and logistics systems. So you're kind of your typical like traditional software consultancy. But as I got more interested in Tezos, um, I stopped booking, more paid hours for other clients because I just wanted to spend more time in Tezos. And this was before any sort of like notion of getting paid for this. It was just fun. You couldn't pay me to keep away, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then my one of my teammates, we started just building more and more stuff on Tezos, and then someone reached out and says like, hey, you want to you want to do this other thing, and it kind of came, as I said, snowballed from there.
So at this stage, have you pivoted entirely to Tezos?
Yeah. So we wound down most of our private sector contracts, actually all of them, and we're essentially a Tezos technology pure play now.
Right on. So as a Tezos technology pure play that's been working and developing in the Tezos ecosystem for a while, what's it like building tools for a blockchain that updates every few months like it's been doing? Does this presumably it presents kind of interesting opportunities, but also probably some pretty interesting challenges as well. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I've not built tooling for other blockchains because like I stayed away until Tezos came along. So I'm not like a gas wars sort of refugee coming into Tezos at this point. But I mean, I can. We do have this on-chain upgrading cycle. We get to upgrade the chain 3-4 times a year. So the new features and the changes come at us like steady and fast at the same time. And so for tooling, I mean, we make these different libraries that developers build on. So keeping up with that pace is challenging. And in the early days, working with the various core teams, it was interesting that we'd get a new protocol and it's like Christmas. It's like, okay, what's in it? What are the changes? But then it's like you only have like a very fixed amount of time to play with those Christmas presents. Like you get only a fixed amount of time to integrate those new features into your libraries that other teams are depending upon. So that's challenging, keeping up with that pace. And it's gotten like way better. So like the ecosystem is, and someone said this to me before, was like, decentralized ecosystems are sort of disorganized by default, but they don't have to be. And I believe the ecosystem has matured significantly in putting that effort into self-organizing, but still maintaining that really decentralized nature of the ecosystem. And that decentralization is like, I mean, that really gives us resilience. It's a good thing.
So, and sort of to that end of the maturing of the ecosystem, your ECAD is the team behind Taqueria, which I understand is a Web3 library for Tezos. For those who might not be familiar, what is a Web3 library, and what are your plans for that library and Taqueria moving forward?
Yeah, so a Web3 library, it's essentially a programming library that allows developers to build Web3 type apps, or like kind of Web2/Web3 type apps. It allows developers to connect and integrate with the blockchain. And so these libraries are important because they make it simpler and easier for developers to write programs to work with a smart contract and work with the blockchain. So it raises the abstraction, and that's sort of a $10 word of saying like it makes things easier to use. If you want to bake a loaf of bread, you get your flour and your ingredients. You don't have to go out and harvest wheat to make it. Yeah.
Makes sense. I like that analogy. Can you also tell us a little bit about Signatory and where it fits in the Tezos ecosystem?
Yeah. So signatory it's what we call a remote signer, and so when you have like a baker, for example, or perhaps some sort of service, maybe a DeFi, like an Oracle or something that has to sign operations to get onto the blockchain regularly in an unattended way, those things need private keys to be able to make those signatures. And so signatory allows people to store their private keys in what we call a HSM, a hardware security module. So this is sort of like a special device or cloud-based service that you can put your private key in there. You can never get it out, but you can get it to sign things. And so signatory it's Tezos aware. It allows it allows a signatory operator to define certain policies to say, I want to be able to sign like this type of operation, but specifically only this type of operation to update some Oracle value or to bake and endorse blocks. But it will not sign anything like transferring all my funds to another account. And signatory, so there's a couple different remote signers in the ecosystem. Signatory is one that supports multiple different backends. So it supports like AWS, Azure, GCP, and some hardware HSMs. And this is important because in the early days of Tezos, there seemed to be a consolidation of the bakers on AWS because the prominent remote signer was only supported AWS. And so that's a form of centralization on the infrastructure level. So I wanted to give mobility to these people to be able to store their keys in different places so that we don't have that de facto centralization on the infrastructure layer.
So does it effectively automate that process, the process of signing the blocks?
It facilitates the automation in a safe way. It's not hard to automate that in the first place, but it provides you some protections and policy-based protections so that you can automate it in a safe and more secure manner.
Okay, makes sense. Onto Taqueria. In addition to Taqueria and Signatory, you've also taken on the important task of building out a equivalent to tools like Truffle and Hardhat, but exclusively for the Tezos blockchain. Something you've dubbed Taqueria. Before we talk about that, I have to ask, why all the Mexican food themed names for all of the products that you build?
Well, yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I refer to as the Tezos sort of spirit animal or spirit food, which is the taco. And I don't know, I mean, like memory is definitely mutable, so I don't know exactly how it came about. But how I remember it was like how the taco became the Tezos sort of spirit food was the core team in Paris in the early days, long before like the beta net was launched, they would occasionally send photos from lunch. And there was one photo, they were in a Mexican restaurant, and there's someone, it might be have been VBot or someone else, and they're like eating a taco in there, and it looked like a good scene. But I think that was posted to Reddit, and someone was like Tezos tacos, and it stuck. That's how I remember it. I again, memory is mutable. I could be wrong, but that's
how many years ago was this?
Well, it was probably in. Don't quiz me on years, but it was before the beta net launch.
Okay.
And so then why are we talking about taquito and taqueria? Well, I mean, we build and work in abstractions. So we and a taquito is a rolled up taco that's grilled and it's tasty. So there's sort of a connection there. And then for taqueria, like taqueria is it's a food kitchen, a place where you go buy the stuff. Yeah, but it's also the workshop where all these cool things get made, and that's kind of what Taqueria is. It's your developer workshop or your developer tool suite.
Okay, so from your perspective, why was it so important for us to have a tool suite, as you say, like Taqueria, built specifically for use in the Tezos ecosystem?
Yeah. So, um, well, I mentioned before that like the Tezos ecosystem is like really decentralized, and so we have all these wonderful tools. And if we just talk about smart contract languages, like we have Lego, SmartPy, we have Michelson itself, which people author directly. We have Archetype, and then there's more as well, such as like Indigo and a few others. Um, and so like having all of those tools is wonderful, but it's a bit bewildering for a newcomer developer, and it could be a very experienced developer just new to Tezos. So
Mm,
coming into the ecosystem and trying to figure out what to use and how to configure all this stuff into sort of a cogent like workflow.
mm.
Taqueria's goal is to tie together all of these different tools into sort of a cohesive workflow or workshop, if you will, and make it easier. So make it easier for experienced engineers to get up and running, but also make it easy for newcomers to get up and running, and to make the technological approach for these people easier to get up and running and to get to that moment of satisfaction.
Okay. So for these experienced users and newcomers to Tezos who are wanting to use these tools, what kinds of things can they actually do with the tool suite that you've created with Taqueria?
Yeah, so well, just like Taqueria, it's in beta at the moment, so and I consider it more of like a developer preview at this moment. And so I'm, it's we're very welcoming for early adopters to try it out. We do have like a really solid roadmap and new features coming that are so our next release and subsequent release is going to really provide a lot of value. Um, and so it allows a developer to have like a single interface to like compile all of their smart contracts in their projects and then originate them to a test net or a sandbox or mainnet. um, and then it also has features to like manage a local sandbox. We have some real neat features around creating static types based off the Michelson data types, which is pretty novel. That's a new thing we put together, and it makes the developer experience safer, but also more intuitive.
Okay. So I understand you're ready to do a bit of a demo of Taqueria with of the beta version of Taqueria today. I'm excited to have a look. Can we take a peek at that right after we do the announce the giveaway word and do the lightning round?
Sounds good to me.
Great. Um, the keyword for today's Tezos branded Nano Ledger and the ECAD Labs swag bag that we're giving away is exclamation point taco. Enter the keyword exclamation point taco in the live stream chat, and Nightbot will randomly select today's winner, who will announce before the end of the stream. Okay, now, Jev, it's lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers, and this is just for fun so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Okay. I guess so. I have to be.
Chips or donuts?
uh, Neither. Chips, maybe. I guess.
Neither. That's the only wrong answer there is. Simpsons or Family Guy?
Oh, maybe like early season Family Guy, but
Ooh,
no, it's got to be The Simpsons. Yeah, it got to be
fair,
The Simpsons.
fair. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Uh, 100 duck-sized horses will be have way better comedic value. We'll do that.
Way better comedic value for sure. Is this real life or are we in a simulation?
The big ones. Maybe a simulation. It's a pretty sophisticated simulation. It's a pretty dope video game. Probably, maybe.
Fair enough. True or false? Money buys happiness.
False. False.
Name one thing you absolutely want to do before you die.
Oh. Eat sushi in, what was it? Jiro's in Tokyo.
That's a great answer. The last place you traveled was?
Ireland. No, London. Ireland and London.
Okay. In 5 words or less, how would your wife describe you?
She called me ordinary the other day, so that was new.
That's a
And
good
my
word.
kids complained. My kids complained. They're like, "Dad's not ordinary." And so then they reached consensus that I'm definitely not ordinary. So I guess maybe abnormal. Who knows?
Finally, speaking of your children, as a father of two, how do you explain to your kids what you do for a living?
Blockchain. Oh man, I've tried this actually. Wait a minute. I bought this years ago. It didn't help much. Blockchain for babies. It's pretty weak. It doesn't talk about proof of stake, and there's nothing about on-chain governance. Don't
I
recommend.
can't
Wouldn't buy
believe you
again.
have that. That's great. So they have a bit of background info from reading that book anyway.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Excellent answer. This concludes the TezTalks lightning round. Now let's get into that demo. Let's have a look at this taqueria.
Okay, this is all just the
Take it
nervous
away,
part.
Jev.
So we'll see if the demo gods shine on me today. So, okay. Well, let's start with just a quick peek at the Taqueria website. While I just
Are
give a
those
quick
tortilla chips there?
yeah. Thank you for
Very nice.
for connecting that. Good. Pretty abstract, but that's the idea. So yeah, Taqueria, it's a developer tool suite. You use it either as like a command line interface on your workstation, or as a VS Code extension. And it's a plugin based architecture. So everything in all of the capabilities in Taqueria is sort of contributed by a plugin that you would have configured in your project. And I mean, presently, as I said, like we're sort of in the early days here of Taqueria, so we're welcoming early adopters and curious folk to try it out. So far, we have plugins for 3 smart contract languages. That's Lego, SmartPy, and also Archetype. And we have plugins for the Flex Tezos sandbox from the awesome Oxhead Alpha team, as well as Taquito. So the Taquito plugin is kind of neat because we've designed Taqueria to be language agnostic in the future. So presently in this version, it supports developing your applications in JavaScript or TypeScript. But in the future, we should be able to support other languages for the developer in things like potentially like Python or Java or Go or what have you. So that's kind of a quick overview of some of the philosophy of Taqueria. Oh, one other thing that we've gone to a lot of effort in is to make it possible for others to develop their own plugins for Taqueria. So in Tezos, there's like this Cambrian, and there will be this Cambrian sort of explosion of developer tools and different technologies and different static analysis things. And we know that we won't be able to develop plugins for all of those things, nor do we want to sort of like hold domain over that. So we really want this to be an open framework for people to build upon. So we went through a lot of effort in that. And actually, the Archetype team was one of the first teams to contribute and write their own plugin for their compiler and submit it to upstream it into the Taqueria project. And we have there are some other teams developing plugins for like things like indexers and stuff. So that's exciting. So I'm going to change my screen here to a console, and we'll do a little demo. It's not going to be anything too in depth.
Sounds great.
So now let's see if my screen will share here and come up in the main window. Any day now. So yeah, so as we're waiting for that to work, I'm just going to try and reshare it here again. Demo gods, they're laughing at me.
There it is.
There we go. Okay, so this is a console on my local terminal on my local workstation here, and I'm going to show you 2 ways of interacting with the Taqueria tool. So one is just the command TAQ, which is short for Taqueria. Nice short command, easy to type. And so if I run this here, I'll get some help information. And this is showing us that there's two subcommands, init and scaffold, and that's not a lot, but that's because I don't have a project set up yet with it, and there's no plugins configured or installed. So as we get our project up and running here, we'll see more commands show up as those plugins are installed, and they contribute more capabilities to Taqueria as we go. So the tac init subcommand that allows us to initialize a brand new empty project, and we can build it up slowly. But today I'm going to focus on the tac scaffold subcommand. And so a scaffold is kind of like a blueprint or a structure of an existing application. And I have a scaffold here for today's demo, so I'm going to pull up. So the command here I'm going to run is tac scaffold, and it's a URL to a GitHub repo that contains the scaffold. And again, it's very easy for anybody to make their own scaffold in the future as well. So, and I'm going to call this new project that I'm creating called TezTalks demo, and we'll run that there. It's going to pull down the scaffolds and initialize our new project into a folder here called TezTalks demos. So here I have the new folder, TezTalks demos. In here we have a sample contract and a few other things. And at this point now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this in VS Code, and we'll start exploring the tool from there. So I'm just going to switch my window here again. Give me a moment. Okay. So we're gonna should see VS Code here. So here's my VS Code editor, and we have a Taqueria plugin for VS Code, and it's available on the VS Code extension store. So you can download it directly from here. So presently, the Taqueria extension provides features like in the command line palette, so we can execute things like compile and originate and a few other things, which we're going to show here in a moment. Taqueria will get, or the VS Code extension will get a lot more of interactive sort of user interface stuff in the future as well. So it's going to be pretty neat. So we'll have a quick look at the structure of the project here. This is a very simple small project. It consists of a Lego smart contract here. So this is an example, a popular example contract from implemented in JavaScript, the JavaScript syntax of the Lego language, and it's called the increment decrement counter. It just makes a number go up, number go down. So, but before we get into that, so every Taqueria project has a .tac folder, and in here we have a config file. So this allows a developer to sort of declare the things that are the properties of their project. And in here it covers things such as the type of plugins that this project has. So this project is relying on the Lego plugin, FlexTeza, and the Tezos client. It also defines things like environments, and these are either like sandboxes, test nets, or mainnet. And so this takes a lot of kind of grunt work out of setting up a new project. For a new developer, they can have to figure out, okay, what's a test net? What's the test net called? Where do I get faucet keys or test tokens? And what RPC do I use? So this makes all of that a lot easier and faster to kind of get started with. And then it also defines a bunch of named implicit accounts as well that we'll be able to use in our project further down the line as well. So I'm going to compile a contract here. So if I in VS Code, I'll use the VS Code extension first, and then I'll show you using the command line interface. So if I do Control-Shift-P, that's the common shortcut for the VS Code extension palette, command palette. And from here, I can choose different Taqueria targets. And so I'll just run compile here. And it's going to confirm to me that the compilation is successful. And so it compiled the example.js Lego, and it made a new artifact in the artifacts directory called example.tz. So we can go and click on that here. And so this is the Michelson source code that's produced by the Lego smart contract. And excuse me. So I can also do that compilation using the CLI as well, just by doing a tac compile, and it'll do the same thing here. A couple other neat things, capabilities we have here is we can also do something called type checking. So if we do tac type check, this will type check all of the smart contracts in our project. And so you might think, okay, well, what's type checking? So Michelson is a strongly typed language, and that's one of the really that's a very important sort of property of Tezos in general, that Michelson is readable and it has this strong typing. And so if for fun here, I'm going to change the storage type from an int to nat to a natural number, and we'll rerun here the type check. And you'll see here that it's going to say that it's now invalid, and it gives the developer that fast feedback saying there's something wrong with your contract. So we can correct that again by getting Lego to recompile the contract. Lego certainly knows how to write out or produce good, well-formed Michelson. So yeah, that's the compilation. Also, if I run tac here just on its own, you'll see that it has a lot more capabilities. So in addition to init and scaffold, we also have things like compile, start sandbox, stop sandbox, list accounts and deploy, type check and simulate. And so as you install more plugins into your project, you will get more capabilities showing up here. So we can do, for example, list accounts for local, and we'll see that we have Bob, Alice, John, Jane, and Joe, and they're all pre-funded with different amount of Tez. So we didn't have to go and get faucets and so on, faucet keys. We can also do an origination of a contract. So if I do tac originate, it's going to automatically originate all our contracts, in this case it's one, to the local sandbox. And if we have, so in future releases here, if we have more than one contract and there's an interdependency within those contracts, Taqueria will be able to figure out the dependency between them. So it'll originate them in the correct order and then have the correct references between that dependency graph of smart contracts. And this will extend to dependencies on off-chain things such as IPFS hashes as well in the future. And this is all going to be made possible by our upcoming feature called the State API. Then originating, for example, to a testnet should just be as easy. So if I do originate, and I can do -e Jakarta net, so -e stands for environment. This will allow me to originate the same contracts to a testnet, a live testnet. Now, our testnets are real working testnets, and the block times on that is about 20 seconds. So this command will take a little longer. And the delay here really highlights as well the value of having a local sandbox. Developers, our attention span is pretty tight. And so the developer feedback loop is really, really important. So, I'm talking a lot here, but if a developer has to wait for this, well, at least me personally, if I have to wait this long for this to run, I'm going to be getting distracted. I might be off looking at Twitter or some sort of orange site. And I may never come back, or, at least I might come back, but it might be a half hour later and it'd be like, oh, what the hell happened? Today Jakarta net seems to be a bit slow because this should have finished already. So, okay, well, let's let that run in the background there, and we'll see what else we can do here. So then one final thing here we can do is we can run we can simulate the invocation of an entry point on the smart contract locally. And this command here is still a little low level. We're having to pass in some left-right combs here, but this is going to get simpler. But this is just to highlight that what is coming. So this allows us to execute the increment entry point on this smart contract, and it's going to have the initial value, let's say, of 42. And then we're going to increment it by 3. So when we run that, we should get a result of 45. And this is a useful sort of debugging feedback loop again for smart contract developers. Now, this command will eventually be represented as a point-and-click interface directly in VS Code, in the VS Code extension. So it's going to again make the experience and sort of the learning discovery process for new developers, we hope, a lot easier. And yeah, that kind of wraps up the demo. Again,
very cool.
It's I characterize Taqueria today as ready as a developer preview. So welcoming early adopters, and we're looking for that feedback for sure. And in the next couple of releases here, we believe that it's going to really start providing a lot of value. At the end of the month, we'll be starting doing regular office hours for the Taqueria team, where we're going to be doing regular demos of new features, and we'll be getting a lot more in depth on that state API and deployment concerns and so on. So yeah,
so where can people check those out?
The website, taqueria.io, we have a Twitter handle as well where we'll be promoting and announcing these sessions. So do follow us on Twitter. The Taqueria handle we haven't been using. We're just going to start using it now because we are starting to solicit, kind of promote it for early adopters. Yeah.
And the official new release of Taqueria is coming in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so we just released a version 0.3 this week, and then I think in a couple of weeks we'll have 0.4, and then we have a good release cadence. There's going to be a lot of features coming regularly.
Very cool. So obviously, tools like these require support from those who are already working in the Tezos ecosystem, right? What will your team be doing to drum up participation as you roll these things out?
Well, I mean, ultimately we want Taqueria to sell itself based on the value it provides. So, I mean, but to get there, we do want to encourage people to start using it so we can get that early feedback as it starts to mature and really provide proper value. We are working on a new interesting scaffold, which is a NFT scaffold, which is going to have an NFT minting app ready made, and the smart contract and everything to go with that. And so the idea there is that should be a reference application, so people can really see Taqueria working with a really kind of cohesive workflow, and they can see how a project is all plumbed together, so they can take those lessons and implement them in their own project. Or if someone's making a new NFT project, they can use that as a starting point. And we're hoping that'll pull in some new users as well, and give us good feedback on how we can continue pushing and improving the project.
Cool. And you're currently collaborating with us here at TezTalks to put together the first post-COVID restriction Tezos Vancouver Meetup in just a few short weeks here. What can you tell our viewers about this event and what they can expect to see there?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, I'm so excited that we can get out and meet in the real world.
Me too.
This meetup space stuff is kind of cool, but let's meet up. So yeah, the Vancouver meetup, we used to run these before the pandemic, so the last Thursday of every month in Vancouver, we'll be running a meetup. It's in the Hive co-working space. And if you look for the link there on meetup.com, you should be able to find that. So anybody in the Vancouver area, please come along. Our first one is going to be on May, I think, 26th, the last Thursday of the month. And we'll be doing some refreshments and snacks, and maybe even a short talk on
any
some stuff
tacos
as well. We might do. Hopefully we'll have some food. Maybe tacos. Tacos are a bit messy to eat, but they're delicious. So I think the trade off is worth it.
It's a good time to start getting these things going again. Obviously, we're at quite an interesting point in the sort of ongoing evolution of the Tezos ecosystem and the community. As somebody who's been involved on such a deep level for such a long amount of time, what are your thoughts on where we're currently at in Tezos's evolution and where we can expect to be headed in the next couple of years?
Yeah. Well, the ecosystem has it's been maturing a lot, and it's interesting for Tezos because we're a layer one blockchain that is built from scratch, whereas we have so many other blockchains that are they're variants of Ethereum. And they get to leverage all of those toolings and so on, tooling and libraries and stuff. So they really do have a head start. Tezos has had there's been an enormous amount of effort into all of that end of things, and I think that that's not really kind of acknowledged by the broader crypto community. Like, we've had to build all of this stuff from scratch, and so. That definitely does take time for tooling to improve, but the things that are coming, we have privacy and sapling on Tezos. We have optimistic rollups coming, and improvements to scalability on layer one, as well as like the rollup solutions as well. So yeah, the future is bright. There's a lot more to do, and I think the sort of I'm not really privy to the strategies, but whatever others are doing in the ecosystem to bring on these huge sponsorship deals with Manchester United, Formula One, all these sports franchises, that's really amazing, and it is building that brand awareness, and it's happening alongside the technology maturing, and us really finding our cadence and feet there. And then there's so much building in this ecosystem. It's hard to keep up with. So I think it's important for the tooling teams, protocol teams to not lose sight of where we're going, and keep up with what we're doing. It's pretty exciting.
Right on. Yeah, we're actually going to have the team from McLaren on next week at this time, so be sure to tune in for that.
Oh, awesome! I guess you're not gonna. Are you gonna get Ricardo or Orlando on there? No chance.
We tried.
Yeah.
All right. We're running out of time here. I mean, we could go on, but we're time limited. So I'll announce the winner of today's Tezos branded Nano Ledger and the ECAD Labs swag bag giveaway. Today's winner is Lulian Militaru. Great name. And a great prize for you. Okay. Congratulations. To claim your Ledger and ECAD swag, just email us at social@tezoscommons.org. We'll request a screenshot for verification that you're the account owner, and then we'll get all of that stuff over to you just as quick as we can. For those who missed out today, remind you there are awesome giveaways to be found frequently here on the Tezos live stream, so keep tuning in. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks, and we'd love to hear from you, good or bad. Jev, thanks so much for joining us today. It's always awesome to speak to the folks working behind the scenes, building awesome projects like Taqueria and Tezos, and keeping us at the forefront of the blockchain revolution. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we sign off here?
No, it's been a pleasure, Stu. Thank you so much for having me, and it's been fun.
Oddly enough, my whole Tezos journey began with you sending me an email with 5 Christmas Tezos in it, and now here we are.
Yeah. So yeah, Tezos Santa.
To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on the TezTalks live stream. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons, and our awesome guest has been Jev Björsell, founder and CEO of the fabulous ECAD Labs. Now let's go eat some tacos.